A lot of us are wondering, since JD Vance did so well against Tim Walz, what would happen if you turned it up to 11? What if JD Vance were actually the presidential nominee and you had Kamala Harris knowingly be going against the person that just destroyed her vice presidential candidate in Tim Walz? And let's say that JD Vance picked Joni Ernst as his vice presidential nominee, as that's an older woman, and let's just balance out the ticket that way, and let's get down to the 7 swing states. So obviously JD Vance is not really losing any support from where Trump got it in the first place, as obviously most Republicans are going to vote for Vance. Well, in this case, that would mean that he's already at 219 electoral votes, and Kamala already has about 226 electoral votes secured. Now, when it comes to Joni Ernst, she's a 54-year-old woman senator from Iowa. So she adds to the ticket insofar as the diversity aspect to balance it out, and also, again, a little bit more age than Vance, who's about only 40 years old, believe it or not. Imagine a politician at national office only 20 years older than me, but here we are. And so anyway, we do have 7 states here. As we know, the polls generally have Trump down by 2 points at the national level, which the popular vote is not the end-all be-all, so we don't have to stress about that, folks. But generally speaking, we do know that JD Vance is the type who is super articulate, and so the question at this point is, what is the trajectory of the race? Currently, I believe, and I'm biased, I have a Trump flag on my wall, but the point is that I think Donald Trump is poised to win this election. Now, and it may not be a Reagan landslide, and in fact, Jesus Christ himself probably wouldn't even win by that much, as obviously there's a ton of atheists in this country. But obviously landslides demographically are just not tenable nowadays. So a big win is something like winning by more than maybe 2 states. But to get to the point here, I do think these 7 states are going to be within a few points of each other. If we look at 2020, it was very narrow either way. And that was with Biden winning the popular vote by several million votes and to the tune of about 4.6 percentage points. So as crazy as that sounds, yes, he apparently got more votes than Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah, anyway. We do have Kamala Harris here up by about 2 points at the national level against Trump. So how does JD stack against that? Because obviously JD is the type who is nominally, I would say, more articulate, but also less exciting. And that's a difficult proposition. It's like the good guy versus the bad guy. And so who's going to be more appealing? Who's going to win over the princess from the tower? Is it going to be, in a proverbial sense, Vance, or is it going to be a falter because he is too much like Mitt Romney? Now, I'm here to tell you that he's actually the best of both worlds in a way that most are underestimating. So on one hand, I think he would, let's just start out with Arizona, for instance. Arizona is interesting. Arizona, the state that I'm in right now, it's like 90 degrees out in October. Yes, it is. Anyway, I think that this is going to go Republican. The reason why it's going Republican, by the way, is because Arizona is already the strongest out of the 7 states right now. And so the battlegrounds currently vary as far as 2 points to Kamala, to 2 points for Vance, obviously. Donald Trump. But again, like I said, 95% of the vote for Trump is going to Vance at least, and he's gaining some more on top of that from the middle. And so I think that, low-key, and this is just a stat most people don't know about 94% of Republicans support Donald Trump as the nominee. Whereas I think going forward, I think that the remaining 6% are largely Nikki Haley types. Nikki Haley types are the sort of people that voted for McCain in 2008, voted for Romney in 2012, and so they don't have qualms with voting against a charismatic Democrat like Obama. Their qualm is like with a Republican being kosher, and by that I mean like playing within the boundaries of the normative post-Reagan Republican order, the compassionate conservative archetype espoused by George W. Bush circa 2004. So anyway, the point being is that these 6% of Republicans will come home to Vance more so than they would for Trump, and so that would help him in Arizona succinctly. But Nevada is not as good of a picture for Republicans. I think Nevada would likely go blue in this scenario. Reason being is that for Nevada, you need more of a working class appeal, and JD and Trump have differing aspects to that, as like obviously Donald Trump is a billionaire who grew up with a silver spoon, or in this case, golden spoon in his mouth. So it's not to say that Trump relates to them on a visceral level like that, but it is visceral insofar as like he personally he espouses a sort of energy, some riz, some aura that is totally more relatable to these men in the blue collar industry than are people like Vance, who by all means were born broke as hell. I mean, if you're calling your grandma Mima, I mean, you did not grow up easy. I can tell you what. Anyway, the point being is that Vance, although already from a blue-collar background, he totally is not the type that comes off that way, like the affect. And you could say, he went to an Ivy League school, and I find that impressive. Tim Walz thinks that's like something to hold against him. whereas like he went to like some state school. I go to a state school, so like I'm not in a position to say like, oh, what an elitist scum. It's like, well, if I got accepted there, I'd go too. But anyway, he graduated from Yale Law School. He talks in a way that is not really blue collar, and that's not his fault, but it's just the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. It's kind of like it's like a very well-spoken black guy goes to like the Migos concert, and he doesn't sound like the other ones over there, other black people. It's just the way it works. So I mean, that appeal to the working class might not be as strong for JD as it is for Trump, but I don't know either. Anyway, Latinos in Nevada are also, in particular, probably more attuned to, I think, Donald Trump than they are to Vance. Again, hard to explain, but I am Mexican, so that's my cop-out, just believe me. I mean, you can see the skin right here. Okay, so anyway, JD Vance is probably not going to do as well with Latinos as is Trump. Not so much because they hate Vance or anything, or that they think he's racist. I just think that they don't find him as personable, I guess. And also Latinos, and again, this might sound like a self-report, but they're more into like the dictatorial types, like the macho, machismo, strongman leader, and Vance is not necessarily that. He's too well-spoken to. Anyway, so we do have 5 remaining states here. We have Wisconsin, we have Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. I think we're gonna go with Georgia next. Now, Georgia is a state that purportedly flipped for Joe Biden at like 3:33 in the morning. Take that as you will. But Georgia right now is a state that the Republicans almost definitely need to win it back if they want to win the White House. As of right now, you see that JD's at 230 electoral votes. The Harris Wall's 232, so he's slightly behind here. Anyway, Georgia is one of the stronger states for Trump. In fact, it's a top 2 state between Arizona and Georgia. He's probably winning these states by 2-ish. And so if that's the case, then Vance is likely to carry this state. I think, like I said, Georgia does have a good amount of historical Republicans that voted for Romney by like 8 percentage points in 2012. But, 2016, 20, and 20, the trend was more Democrat. Now, this is mostly due to Democrats flooding in the state from California, as there were obviously like tax incentives to bring Hollywood over to Atlanta. And look how well that worked out for them. But anyway, but there is still, remnant Republicans that came out to vote for Brian Kemp, for example. And so I do think that JD will do better with that. And another analogy is that I think JD would appeal more to the college-educated white people too, that are more averse to Trump historically. North Carolina is a similar story to Georgia. Now, Harris is, for whatever reason, rallying a ton there. And by rallying a ton there, I mean like rehearsing the same lines from all the other rallies, plus exorbitant Uber fees and bus fees. So, I mean, if you're a driver in these states, you're having a great time, and you might vote for Harris because she's busing a shit ton of people. Not to be too vulgar, my bad, but anyway. North Carolina is going Republican. Now, the reason being is that while Trump lost Georgia, for example, in 2020, okay, you can obviously see that North Carolina voted for Trump just officially in the last election. So if any of these 7 states will go Republican, the no-brainer is that it would be North Carolina over the other 6. Though, obviously, it's not polling as well as Arizona or Georgia. I just don't believe that. But maybe I'm stupid. Either way, I think he's winning it. So right now, JD's at 262 electoral votes to the Harris Wall's 232. And so right now, it's not looking so hot for the Democrats. So here you need 1 out of 3 states, if you're JD Vance, to win the election wholesale. And for Harris Walls, they need to play defense on all 3. So as of right now, if you give the rest of these states to the Republicans, now they have a 2 in 3 chance of winning at least. Well, if this is the case, then all of a sudden your odds get super clean for Vance Ernst. So in this case, I think Pennsylvania would be the strongest state for Trump, and in this case, Vance. So I think that's going to JD by maybe 1 to 2 percentage points. Michigan, on the other hand, I think will be more difficult, as obviously there is more things in flux. There's more of a demography issue. And this is hard to explain in such a short format of a video, but Michigan is just more difficult to flip. It is the most liberal out of the 3 states as of the last, I think, 8 years. So I just think it's more logical that, like, let's say if JD were to win the state by 1 or 2, that Michigan, by the skin of the teeth of Kamala Harris, goes blue. Wisconsin, on the other hand, is more approachable for Republicans. It's a smaller state, which means that it's easier for the money to get around. And that's hard to explain, but obviously there's a funding advantage historically for Democrats. And so the smaller the state, the more a dollar stretches, is logistically what I'm saying. And so for that reason, I think that Trump, and in this case, Vance, would do better in Wisconsin. And so what I'm looking math-wise here is like, 1.5 Vance in Pennsylvania, Michigan could be like 0.2 for Harris, and then Wisconsin would be, let's say 0.9 for Vance. And so right now you end up with a vote count of 291 electoral votes for J.D. Vance and Joni Ernst. And then you end up with the Harris-Walz ticket getting a measly 247 electoral votes, which is actually a margin of about 44 electoral votes, which I would not say is a landslide in the slightest bit at all. But it's also, I would say it's a respectable victory. And so this would be the closest election since the year 2004, I believe, or maybe the year 2000 even. So closest election in about 20 years. Anyways, like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Comment down below if you have any commentary at all, and I'll read all of them eventually. I'm a very busy guy. And yes, I'm recording this with my iPhone. Yes, I've been having so many audio issues. I swear to God, guys, you do not know the half of it. And as a broke college student, spending $60 on an adapter like this for it to not work is back-breaking. But I'll see y'all on the next one. Adios.